GloCal Group Consulting trabaja con las organizaciones que buscan alcanzar resultados extraordinarios, convirtiendo la visión estratégica de los líderes en compromiso y ejecución acelerada a través de una cultura de pertenencia y mejoramiento continuo. Estrategia, liderazgo, cultura organizacional, ejecución y mejora en una misma empresa a tu servicio. Somos expertos globales en soluciones locales. GloCal, pasión por mejorar.
Bien, buenos días. Es un placer que nos acompañen el día de hoy en este evento que ha sido organizado con un hermoso y gran esfuerzo del Ministerio de Industria, Comercio y Mipymes, con la ayuda de la OGTIC en todo este tema de la tecnología. Les estamos muy agradecidos. Y también con la invitación que hizo extensiva también el Consejo Nacional de Zonas Francas, ADOZONA, la AIRD, FEDOCAMARAS y las cámaras de Comercio y Producción de Santo, Domingo y Santiago, a través de los cuales les damos a todos la más cordial bienvenida a este evento y les agradecemos por su participación. Sandra, if you can advance one. Hoy estaremos viendo el plato fuerte del día, que es la introducción por primera vez y de manera directa en el país del programa TrueLink de la Universidad de Kentucky. Ya ustedes conocerán más adelante de qué se trata todo esto, pero estamos muy entusiasmados con esta oportunidad. One more, Sandra, por favor. La agenda y el día de hoy va a suceder de la siguiente manera, ¿no? Tendremos con nosotros, ya está con nosotros el viceministro Flaquer, que nos va a dar unas palabras de bienvenida. Luego tendremos una breve introducción de parte de GloCal Group Consulting sobre todo este tema de Kentucky, por qué nos es de utilidad y quiénes son ellos. Y luego vamos directamente al plato fuerte, que es precisamente este seminario. Tendremos una sesión de preguntas y respuestas al final. El chat estará abierto de forma que podamos ir recogiendo las preguntas a manera que las van formulando y poder hacer entonces un resumen para todos de estas preguntas y tratar de dejar la mayor cantidad de tiempo posible para responder sus inquietudes al final de la exposición. Como ya observaron, el seminario será en inglés. Tenemos traducción simultánea. Pues como dijimos, las preguntas van al final y cualquier seguimiento o inquietud adicional que puedan tener nos pueden escribir por correo tanto a link@glocal.group como a alondra.galvez en la dirección del Ministerio de Industria y Comercio, micm.gov.do. Sin mayor preámbulo, yo quiero dejarles con el viceministro Carlos Flaquer, quien es el encargado del sector de zonas francas y regímenes especiales. Y de nuevo, gracias, Carlos, por todo el apoyo para brindar este seminario a nuestro país.
Muchísimas gracias, Carlos, y voy a hacerlo lo más breve posible. Sé que el plato fuerte es lo que viene después, pero para nosotros desde el Ministerio de Industria, Comercio y Mipymes es un verdadero honor darle a todos la bienvenida a este importantísimo seminario que ha sido organizado por los representantes de GloCal Group y bueno, organizado junto a la Universidad de Kentucky. Este espacio, la verdad que ha sido concebida como una de las iniciativas tendentes a promover lo que es la mejora continua de los procesos productivos en la industria local y las zonas francas. Y hoy nos complace presentarle esta introducción a estos principios, esta filosofía, esta cultura de mejoramiento de procesos que nació ¿verdad? Desde las operaciones de Toyota y que ahora es más conocido como Lean Manufacturing. Para este ministerio es de altísimo interés el poder promover los espacios de intercambio de conocimiento que le permitan a las empresas conocer de experiencias y de mejores prácticas que los puedan apoyar a ser cada vez más competitivos en mercados que cada día más son más globales. Los procesos productivos más eficientes, sin duda alguna, se traducen a su vez en un incremento de la calidad de nuestra oferta, así como la generación de nuevas oportunidades para exportar cada vez más productos. Y bueno, esto desde que asumimos el compromiso que nos fue asignado por el presidente mediante el decreto 588-20 que declara la industrialización como una política de Estado y una prioridad nacional. Primera vez que se declara la industria como prioridad nacional. Hemos estado trabajando sin descanso en la identificación de aliados, en más ofertas formativas, oportunidades locales e internacionales que puedan garantizar que esta fuerza laboral de nuestras empresas sea plenamente capaz de poder enfrentar estos retos que trae consigo la industria 4.0 y la economía post-pandemia. Esto es clave, lo hemos hablado mucho. El capital humano es crítico en todo este proceso si nosotros queremos pasar a una nueva plataforma en nuestra zona franca y nosotros como industria en República Dominicana. Esto forma parte de las acciones de educación e información técnica del plan de industrialización y hoy le presentamos mucho más que una metodología. Lean es una filosofía, es una cultura de mejoramiento de procesos y que están estos basados en la excelencia y en la búsqueda permanente de operaciones más productivas. Quiero agradecer profundamente a la Universidad de Kentucky por permitirnos conocer de su oferta y compartir con nosotros todos estos años de experiencia en la formación de líderes y técnicos en esta materia. A todos los actores públicos y privados que nos acompañan como aliados estratégicos en esta iniciativa por sumarse a este viaje hacia la industrialización. Y a todos ustedes, ¿no? A Carlos y GloCal Group, que desde un principio ha estado empujando esto y que ha sido un abanderado de la Universidad de Kentucky aquí, de todo lo que puedan proveernos a nosotros. Y bueno, a todos ustedes que están conectados por este compromiso y este ejemplo que dan al capacitarse y poner estas habilidades al servicio de sus empresas y de nuestro país. Cada paso que damos y cada aporte con el que contribuimos desde nuestros respectivos espacios suman esfuerzos colectivos para el país, para el crecimiento económico y la generación de empleos en beneficio de todos nosotros. Y confirmando cada vez más que todos somos parte de la industrialización. Les deseamos una jornada altamente productiva y muchísimas gracias. I'll switch to English for the last part, and I'll say that I have to admit that I am a Mike Krzyzewski fan more than Calipari. So I have to say that just to be really honest. But I appreciate all of you, and I hope you have a very productive session.
Gracias, Carlos. Gracias por esas palabras. Y yo creo que sin ánimo de politizar el comentario, que yo sé que el eslogan del gobierno es "Estamos cambiando". Yo creo que sí, la República Dominicana definitivamente, no solo a nivel gubernamental, y creo que es lo más importante, todos estamos cambiando. Y habiendo dicho esto, voy a compartirles un poquito de las razones de por qué estamos acá y por qué surge esta iniciativa de parte de nosotros en GloCal. Y es que el mundo, como ya todos saben, ha dado un giro y las cosas están muy cambiantes y volátiles y ha habido innumerables disrupciones, no solamente a nivel interno en nuestro país, como todos ustedes saben, sino sobre todo a nivel mundial. Y esto también va a traer grandísimas oportunidades. Cosas que están pasando muy notoriamente es como por ejemplo un decreto de la administración Biden en los Estados Unidos que decretó revisar su estrategia y la dependencia de China y querer tener un plan para salir en los próximos 2 años, por lo menos de una gran parte de esa dependencia. Asimismo, una prestigiosa empresa empresarial que hace encuestas empresariales, se llama Gartner, hizo una encuesta donde 1/3 de las 260 compañías líderes globales que tienen presencia en China planean también salir. Y como saben, los precios de los envíos, no solamente marítimos, sino también aéreos, han sufrido alzas sumamente significativas. Esto está llevando a que instituciones como el BID estén realizando esfuerzos muy concretos alrededor de algo que habrán oído por ahí que se llama nearshoring, y tiene que ver con esa relocalización y lo que eso va a traer como oportunidades para países de la región de Centroamérica y el resto de Latinoamérica y en particular nosotros que llevamos una cierta delantera en estos procesos podemos capitalizar. También evidentemente esas disrupciones de negocios las hemos visto a lo interno, muchas compañías sufriendo los efectos de la pandemia, otras aprovechándola grandemente, como ha sido el éxito de este servicio de delivery que todos conocemos, y donde también temas de digitalización ya no se han vuelto un deseo, sino que se han vuelto una necesidad y algo que tenemos que abrazar. Y esto en parte también conecta con lo que vamos a ver hoy con el tema del Lean, producto de que para poder digitalizar una empresa usted tiene que trabajar en cómo la gestiona y cómo mejora los procesos a nivel interno. Next one, Sandra. Así que, ¿por qué traemos Lean? ¿Por qué traemos la Universidad de Kentucky? Bueno, en esencia, y yo creo que esto me lleva un poquito a la reflexión de experiencias pasadas. Yo tengo más de 15 años conociendo y trabajando con el grupo de Kentucky, y siempre les enviaba ingenieros y personal clave de las empresas que tuve el honor de dirigir para abrazar todo este proceso de mejoramiento y de transformación. Y pues aprendimos que detrás de este programa, detrás de esta escuela, hay un nivel de conocimiento y de génesis de todo lo que es hoy. Se conoce como Lean Manufacturing, pero empezó como el sistema de producción de Toyota, del cual ellos fueron parte. Y eso lo voy a dejar para que ellos mismos lo compartan más adelante. Pero esto básicamente es obtener el conocimiento con un nivel de práctica, no solamente desde el punto de vista académico, de la gran calidad que tiene la Universidad de Kentucky en su área de ingeniería, sino también porque estas personas han sido y fueron los usuarios originales del sistema de Toyota. Aquí nos vamos a dar hoy el gusto y el placer de tener como plato fuerte a 3 altos ex ejecutivos de Toyota que hoy forman parte de esta escuela y que tuvieron la misión como iniciativa de Toyota de convertir esto en un programa de educación que se pudiera transmitir. Hoy ese programa y todo lo que conocemos como Lean Manufacturing aplica a empresas tanto de servicio como de manufactura, y es básicamente el plato fuerte del día de hoy. Next one, Sandra. Para nosotros en GloCal ha sido importante abrazar esta filosofía porque quizás en nuestra trayectoria y todo el equipo de trabajo detrás de GloCal tiene tal vez la misma experiencia. No siempre fuimos consultores. Es algo a lo que nos estamos dedicando hoy como una misión personal de traspasar conocimiento. Pero a nosotros nos tocó, como les toca a cada uno de ustedes en sus empresas, lidiar con los retos de mejorar los resultados y a veces hasta de sobrevivir. Y esto solamente es posible si se abraza un proceso coherente y organizado de gestión de la empresa y de involucramiento de los empleados. Y hoy por hoy esta es nuestra misión en GloCal, es apoyar estas iniciativas. Así que bueno, vamos a pasar ya al plato fuerte del día. Next one, Sandra. Sandra es la coordinadora de los programas para True Lean de la Universidad de Kentucky, y ella va a hacer en lo adelante la introducción tanto de ella como de su equipo. Así que sin más, vámonos al plato fuerte del día de hoy y gracias a todos por participar y estar con nosotros. Sandra, the floor is all yours.
Oh, thank you so much. Good morning to all of you. Before introducing our team, I would like to thank my co-host Carlos and the Ministry of Commerce for making this event possible today. We are very excited to be here with you. As Carlos mentioned, I am Sandra Dunn. I'm the Client Relations and Business Development Manager for the True Lean program. And today we have 3 of our executive members that will be presenting, Glenn Umminger, Cheryl Jones, and Pete Gritton. They were all among the first employees hired for the first location of Toyota in North America. During Glenn's tenure at Toyota, he led the development of management accounting, the TPS office, the JIT logistics. He also led the development of and served as head of production control and logistics. He was a leader on the original startup team for site selection and development for Toyota operations in North America. He was also vice president of Toyota Motor Sales. Before Glenn retired from Toyota, he served 2 years as an executive on loan to the University of Kentucky. Fortunately for us, after his retirement, he came back to work with us at the university and continues in his position as director of our program. And our second speaker will be Cheryl Jones. She retired from Toyota as vice president of manufacturing, working in final assembly, robotics painting, as well as delivery from a supplier to final assembly. She also served as an advisor to the Toyota Mexico truck plant and a regional team leader for all 6 of the Toyota locations in North America. Our third presenter today will be Pete Gritton. He retired from Toyota as vice president of HR with over 22,000 team members. Pete was also a member of the original startup team. His HR function was to ensure team member engagement as Toyota expanded in North America. This also included the development of executives and management, sustaining the culture, change management, compensation, succession planning, and two-way communication. As you can see, our team has served in numerous positions throughout their careers. We are very fortunate now to have all of them as part of our team at the University of Kentucky. They will share some of their vast knowledge and experience with you today. Before we get started, I would like to invite you to submit your questions anytime during the presentation using the chat feature, and we will address those at the end of our presentation. At this time, I will turn it over to Glenn to start our presentation.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Sandra, thank you, Carlos, and it's an honor for us to have your time this morning, and we want to make the best use of it and try to deliver some good value on this whole subject. To open, I'd like to briefly explain the little background of our program, how it evolved. So as Toyota came to North America, as you see on the right side of this slide, many people wanted to learn, many companies wanted to learn, how do you do it? Many books were being written about Toyota. How do you do it? So Toyota tried to host many companies informally, very open arms, but the line got very long and it was not organized well. So Mr. Cho was the lead Japanese into North America, who later became CEO of Toyota Global. He said, why don't we partner with the regional major university, University of Kentucky, very close to the first plant, and have an organized outreach program. And teaching is also learning. We can learn more about Toyota Production System by sharing our knowledge with outside companies through the College of Engineering, an organized approach. So in 1994, this program was born with that vision. And since then, the program has worked and evolved to really understand the principles, practices from inside Toyota that are transferable to any kind of business. We have worked at that as a group and really developed our knowledge and experience, and we continue to do that today, always keeping a strong relation with Toyota. Toyota assigns an executive in residence at all times. So I want to give you a little background on the origin of that, and this relationship continues through today and ongoing. And even Mr. Cho, he's very retired now in Japan as a senior advisor. He still gets updates on our program status and is still very excited and interested in our program. Okay, Sandra, next slide. A little about the origin of the word lean and Toyota's role in that. This is a little more background for you. That's really important for context. And there was a major book written in 1990 called The Machine That Changed the World. You may have seen this book, you may not, but this was a key book. It was MIT, which is a very well-known engineering university in Boston. They did a study of the auto industry. And of course, we know the auto industry originated in Europe. It was very much craft production, one by one, beautiful cars that did by the US. Also, as you know, mass production, Henry Ford, black Model Ts. They all looked the same, but they were affordable for many, many people. Then they went to Japan, and particularly they got interested in Toyota, because not all Japanese auto companies are made the same. So they got interested in Toyota very much, because what they saw was, here's the craft production from the origin of the industry, but with mass production benefits. So that was very interesting to them. And as they got closer, they learned Toyota had such high customer satisfaction and endless waste elimination. So out of this book and from that study and from seeing Toyota, they concluded that Toyota hates waste. And the author said, this looks like lean. So the word lean in English has many different kinds of meanings, but the word lean in this case is no waste, hate waste. So that was the origin of the word. And in business, this word popped up at this time and has become a regular word, everyday life. After that, many people took off with the word lean and tried to promote and teach their version of lean, many having not practiced it. They read books, they think, and therefore there were many different versions of lean created. Some may be good, but some shortcuts, some that don't work, many that don't work. So that's why we named our program True Lean, because from the origin of the word lean and the true meaning, we have lived it from inside the organization from which the word lean really came out. That's why True Lean. Okay, next slide, Sandra. A little bit more about Toyota's evolution. There was no book for Toyota to say, here's the Toyota production system, here's what lean is. Where was Toyota in the 1950s? They were a very small auto company, really struggling to stay alive, near bankruptcy. They had very few customers. Banks would not loan them any money. So an island nation, they had very few natural resources. So really in big trouble. Toyota was in big trouble in the 1950s. They were hungry. So they had to please every single customer. They could not afford to waste anything. So need drives change. And that's a key for anything you try to do to strengthen your business and your organization. So this transfers to any group. Need drives change. If you're successful, you need to find a need to motivate people to want to improve. And if you're bankrupt, the need is very clear. But you always need to show your need to the organization to really get motivation and buy-in for change. So this was Toyota's case in the 50s. It was bankruptcy, no choice. Next slide. Inside of Toyota, back in the 1950s, there were many people that contributed to Toyota's survival and evolution. And one that is very famous and known as a leader emerged, Taiichi Ohno. And he was a manager in one plant in Toyota, but he innovated many practices that we know today as tools of lean, with Kanban and one-piece flow and built-in quality. Many of the things that are core to Toyota production system and now core to lean were innovated and originated by Taiichi Ohno. But one thing from him, and we know several people that worked directly for him that we were able to work side by side with, he was very strong, no waste, no recurring problems. No waste, no recurring problems. There's no room for that. And that really is a baseline of what's behind true lean. If you think of your companies, Do you have any wasteful work going on? Do you have any waste of material, waste of people's time, waste in a lot of different ways? Of course, the answer is yes. The answer is yes for everybody, including Toyota today. There's always waste around us, wasteful activities, wasteful materials. The point here is to identify that waste systematically and eliminate it step by step by step. No recurring problems. If we look at a summary of what is known as Toyota Production System, I will not go in great detail on this slide, but some key points. The bottom three blocks for the customer, for the employee, for the company. So all three must be served. All three must receive a benefit for an organization to be successful. If you think of this as put the employees, respect the employees, put them in a position to do a great job serving their customers. Their customer might first be the next process in their value chain. So if the employees are in a good position and respected and given a good work environment and supported, they will serve their customers. In the end, the company will win. So all three must win, but the way to win is the employee serving the customer, then the company wins. We see many companies try to go for the company first. Here's an objective for the company. And yes, results count. And our roles in our time in Toyota, we had to deliver results. But the way to deliver that result was empowering and engaging the employee to serve their customers and giving them a good workplace, work environment, and structure by which to do that. That was the better path for the company. Then everybody wins. To do that, the green bar in the middle, standardization, you'll hear a little more about, but standardization becomes a foundation of the operation, whether it's production or non-production work. Standardization must be there. Standardization is really the normal way that things should work. The way we've learned to best do this job is the meaning of standardization. It doesn't mean an engineer designing a process and turning a person into a robot, which is kind of a old-fashioned meaning of standardization. This is the people doing the work have learned this is the best way to do the job. This is normal, what should happen. Then there are two pillars. The left pillar is quality, meaning built-in quality, meaning everybody in their job should always produce perfect quality. This is true of office work, business processes, and production work. It's true of service industries, manufacturing industries, all types of companies. On the right side is just in time. Everybody has heard of JIT, just in time, but sometimes what's not understood about just in time is the real core value of it, which is there's no place for waste to hide. If someone's work is due, material is due, or a data file is due to a next person at this time, and it's not ready, it shows up as late. If it's late, there was a problem. So the waste is surfaced, and that's important. So just in time surfaces waste, as does quality, knowing built-in quality criteria. The job I do, if I'm checking my own quality, if I can't achieve it, that surfaces right away because I cannot pass on work with bad quality. So both of those, quality and just in time, are really core to surface waste, surface problems. If you don't have just in time, problems can hide. And then at the roof is Kaizen. Kaizen is any kind of improvement from a current condition. And in the middle of the house, people are working and managing their own workplace. They're using standardization for normal, they're using quality and just in time to know abnormal, and they're using Kaizen or improvement to eliminate waste and become better, better, better in their own workplaces. So that's all I'll say on that slide for now. And next slide. Moving into our University of Kentucky materials, our translation of the Toyota Production System into a generic true lean approach, which is transferable to any kind of business. And we have worked with all kinds of organizations, hospitals, banks, restaurants, manufacturing, of course. We've not found any organized workplace where these principles and practices are not transferable. They're transferable a little different way than building a car, but the core principles and practices work to strengthen any organization. We have learned that over our many years now. So this model begins with the umbrella on top, the lean culture. Culture is not well understood and talked about very much. People that ran off with the word lean and tried to sell it, consulting companies, lots of times sold tools, a toolbox. Oh, here's Kanban, famous tool. They're just tools. Without the culture and the people side, the tools are just tools and they're meaningless. It takes a whole system and a whole culture to really get the benefits of true lean. And on the left side of the umbrella, you can see principles and practices. So part of the culture, what are your core principles? What are your common practices? Do you know what they are, or are they a little bit random or buried, in which case they're not so stable and clear? So we promote, you need really a clear set of principles, a clear set of practices, and then on the right side of the umbrella, you can see one voice and one system. That means one voice beginning with leadership, and leadership is at the top of this umbrella. One voice is, how does leadership demonstrate the behaviors, demonstrate the principles, really promote the practices that are consistent throughout the organization. If you don't have one voice, if you have different leadership members saying different things, really emphasizing different principles or practices, the organization is a little confused. There's not a solid culture. It becomes, where do you work? Which department do you work? Which plant do you work at? This is our local culture at that plant. That's not good. So consistent culture means one voice leadership delivering the principles and practices. And then via one system. One system means the methodology that is used, such as problem solving that you hear about. What's your one problem solving methodology that's your common practice? And making sure leadership promotes that and stands behind that and practices it themselves. So that gives consistency. That is the foundation to really having the right culture. Now look at the arrows pointing down, those 6 lines pointing down to the green cloud called product. Product can be a physical product or a service. It's any output of an organization. But it says you're either in that green cloud directly producing the product or service, which is the only value you have as an organization to serve your customer. In that product cloud, there are people making product, there are people delivering frontline service to your customers. That's the only place you have a value that you're selling. Anyone who's not directly delivering a service or building the product which has value, what is their role? What's their purpose? What's their value? They are in a supporting role to enable the people making the product or delivering the service to do their best to serve the customer. That's the only reason they're there. And whether it's management or human resources or legal, they have a role that helps the organization create the best product for the customer. That becomes a mindset of a support department. I'm here to support the good creation of the value of the product and support the people who are creating that. So yes, there are technical specialties, lots of experience, lots of business processes, but they're all geared towards strengthening that product value. With that, you see those 2 boxes in the middle, they're duplicate boxes that say standard process. So there should be a standard process everywhere. That's the normal condition. If I'm in legal or finance or human resources, I should have a series of business processes on how we best do this job. And that becomes the normal condition. We need to know that as the standard. Inside the product cloud, there's standardized work. It is the best way to build this product. It is the best way we've learned to deliver this service. So standardization is the foundation, as we said earlier. Once you know normal, you then know abnormal. So that is a trigger for problem solving. So the yellow boxes down the middle of the umbrella represent endless problem solving, which is really endless continuous improvement. So that's a summary of the systematic approach of what true lean should look like. Of course, there's a lot behind this, but this is an introduction for you. Next slide, Sandra. That leads to our own definition of what is true lean. If we write it in words, what is true lean? It's when the group by themselves, meaning the work group in their own workplace, uses systematic problem solving. Systematic means the same methodology, same framework each time to improve the work they do, improve their own work in their own workplace, always toward the achievement of the company's targets and goals. And the last point, this happens when and only when the existing company culture is the reason the improvement occurs. This means the culture says this is just what we do every day. Everybody in their own workplaces at their own levels, including management, is constantly looking for waste, constantly looking to prioritize what do I want to improve step by step and use problem solving to eliminate that waste. It's just what we do. And the culture is driven a lot by leadership. You'll hear more about that later. But that's very different than a lot of companies where improvement are project activities. Oh, the reason the improvement occurred is we have a project team that all they do is make improvements. They launch projects. And there's nothing wrong with a project group, but it has to be supplemental to the core people in their own workplace, improving their own work. It has to handle the big projects, the ones that are tough to do as a supplement. But the core foundation of true lean is when everybody self-manages their workplace. And they do that because the company culture is why we're doing that. Where does that come from? Who is asking for the improvement? What's the manager doing? What's the general manager doing? If they're constantly looking for how we're improving, then the staff, that's how they think. And when the staff is recognized by management for having made an improvement, that's a great job. Keep it up, do more. When you do that over and over, that becomes the culture. Now, there's a lot behind that, but I just want to give you in our short time a flavor for how this works and what stands behind this true lean definition. Okay, next slide, Sandra. Looking a little deeper, everything is a process. So a good process will equal good results. As I said, all of us inside Toyota, Pete, Cheryl, myself, and all of our former colleagues, we had to get results. There's no doubt about it. And we had to get improved results, better and better results, really pushed hard. We pushed ourselves hard, we were pushed hard. At a leader level, we had to get breakthrough results. So make no mistake, getting results was a requirement. But how to get the result? There are different ways to get results. You can use force, you can use special projects, you can manipulate some data, you can do a lot of things to get a result. Say, I did it. But we have learned inside Toyota, we truly believe ourselves, if you really want a sustainable good result, you need to go into the process and change the process and improve the process. So a good process equals good results. A good process equals good results that will carry on and sustain themselves. So that's key. It takes work to do that. It takes discipline to do that. But that's a fundamental point that we like to share. In that, there needs to be a standard process for all types of work. And this is from the people having done the work, knowing the best way to do that job. That's the foundation point. And at the bottom in red, well, first, the mindset of the people in the middle. The mindset of everybody is, I own my process. This isn't just a job I'm employed and told what to do. I own it. I have to live it. I'll always contain and correct all the abnormal activities I see. Because I have a standard and I know what is normal, I'm in a position to see the abnormal and I'm obligated to contain that abnormal at all times. I might not solve the root problem, but I have to contain the abnormal every time. And then I will drive improvements. I can take those abnormals and I can look where my priority is. Where's the most frequent abnormal, recurring abnormal? What do I want to do to drive an improvement and really eliminate the source of that abnormal forever? That's the no recurring waste mindset. So that's got to be the mindset of the people doing their job. Everybody, not just a few management people or leadership, it's the culture. The red words at the bottom, quality and time control are required in all standard processes. If you do not have that defined, how can you put a person in a job and ask them to self-manage? If you put me in any job in your company and you didn't tell me what the quality criteria is, what I need to meet, and when something is due, and let me see it in the standard process, I'm blind to self-manage because I might be trying to do my best, but maybe I'm producing bad quality. I don't even know it. So I need to know what quality criteria is and time control is so I can self-manage. That needs to be clear to me. And the way I can confirm my quality. What's the method I will use? I want to take time out and say, we have not mentioned safety at all. Safety is first. Safety is always first. We don't call it out because it's known as the very first priority, which means never do anything to create an unsafe work environment. If we want to improve quality, we don't improve quality at the expense of safety. We don't deliver on time and become unsafe. Safety is always protected first, then quality, then time. So I just want to emphasize that safety's ultimate importance. We don't mention it because it's just understood that that is the first priority all the time. So with that, if we go to the next slide, and after this slide, I'll be turning it over to Cheryl, but this slide is a very important concept for you to understand. And the left side is kind of an old-fashioned way or not a good way, not a true lean way. And that's where people are all rallied around the product and their mindset is get it done. Get it done is an admirable mindset. It exists a lot. People have pride in their work. But when all they do is swarm the product and get it done, it becomes gray work. Gray means you can't separate normal from abnormal. It's all work. You can't separate valuable work versus wasteful work. So what happens in that case? The waste just continues on because there's no mechanism to identify and eliminate the waste. It just continues on. So the same people work hard at the same waste day after day. And when that happens, fundamentally, that's disrespectful for people. It's taking advantage of their heart of get it done, but get it done means get the same waste done every day too, with no end in sight. That's shame on us as management if we allow that to happen. That's disrespectful of people's time, misusing their heart in their workplace. So move to the right side. And in the center, to simplify this slide, if you organize the same people and into normal and abnormal, so the 4 people at the bottom are doing their work to the standardized work, which means their normal condition is very well known clearly. And if normal is known clearly, abnormal is known clearly. So if there is someone who has the role to handle abnormal work, you have now separated normal from abnormal. And because you've separated the abnormal, you can see the abnormal. So at the bottom, it says that gives systematic waste elimination. You have set the stage to, but you also have now a history with facts and data that show you where the abnormal is happening. And when you have those facts and data of abnormal, you can choose what priority problem to solve next at the root cause. And at the root cause is where you solve it and it never comes back. You can't do all the abnormal that way, but you can select one by one and eliminate the source of that waste in priority order one by one. You means each work group, each level of management. In their own scope of work, everybody is thinking and managing this way. So that's a really critical point and a systematic approach that allows the organization to self-manage and the organization in all parts to be practicing continuous improvement. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Cheryl Jones, and she'll pick up.
Thanks, Glenn. And before I move on, I saw a question pop up real fast about who owns standard work. So I will try and take an opportunity to answer that real fast. So standardized work is owned by the team leader at the operations site. They are the ones who write it. When you think about a lean organization, the group by themselves, they are the ones deciding their standard. Engineering may decide the build standards, but how the process is laid out and the sequence of the process is determined through the team leaders. And that group owns how they're going to do the work, and everyone reports and conforms to the same standardized work and follows it. So just throw that in real fast. When you look at the culture of continuous improvement, if we want everyone engaged, we need everyone engaged in problem solving. And that includes the frontline operations. So we need team members, team leaders, and all of our staff engaged in problem solving on the work that they do. We need middle management leading problem solving activity related to problems that are moving from one department to the next. We need top management looking at company-wide bigger issues, and we talk about the Hoshin level for top management. And so top management's directing some level of problem solving based upon the Hoshin activity. What we see in a lot of companies when we go in is we see maybe most of problem solving happening with a few key members in top management or middle management, and it's only like top down. The key we think is real important is that we have this bottom up frontline operations involvement. And one of the reasons frontline operations may not be involved in problem solving is maybe they can't see the problems that they own. So that was why it ties into they own the standardized work. They own the maintenance of that. They own keeping it up and keeping it current and being consistent with it. So as problems come up, they can do problem solving and improve their standardized work by making changes. So if we go to the next slide, Sandra. For problem solving, we teach the 8-step problem solving process, systematic problem solving within what Toyota uses. Basic concept is find a problem, fix the problem, and keep the problem from coming back. When you look to the right of this, for the 8-step problem solving process that we teach, steps 1 through 5, we say are all part of the plan phase. So step 1, clarifying the problem. Step 2, breaking the problem down. Step 3, target setting. Step 4, root cause analysis. We teach how to use the fishbone and how to do a good 5-why chain with finding the root cause to the problem. Once we find the root cause to the problem, then we can develop a countermeasure. But we say these 5 steps are really part of the plan. It's just the initial planning. When we actually implement the countermeasure in step 6 and see the countermeasure through, this becomes the do in the PDCA cycle. And then step 7, as we monitor both the results and the process, becomes the check. So we're evaluating the successful countermeasures, what's working, what's not working. And then step 8 becomes how we standardize that successful countermeasure so that that problem will not repeat again. That becomes the action in the PDCA cycle. And Toyota's strength is in that step 8, finding a countermeasure that can be standardized and changed and becomes the new level that we use from there forward. That is where we get this continuous improvement as we change that standard process to make the permanent improvement. So from there forward, we're not sliding back to old problems repeating again. And the focus here is about waste elimination. So there are many problems, but we also have to think about some of the problems we're dealing with in terms of what is the waste that's being generated in the organization. So next slide, Sandra. If you look in most organizations, there are many problems going on everywhere. And what we see is usually this culture of it's firefighting. Everyone's trying to survive to get through the day. So most of the effort, when you look at the chart, shows we're in this firefighting mode. And what we want to do is we want to shift from doing just strictly firefighting and being reactive to problems as they come up and start to move toward systematic problem solving over time. The more we can get better at doing systematic problem solving at all levels of the organization, the more time we're going to free up to do more systematic problem solving and less firefighting. Firefighting will never, ever go away. It's still even a part within Toyota. There's some level of firefighting that we have to do. So within the plant in Georgetown, Kentucky, we're producing 1,000 cars, 2,000 cars a day, 1,000 per shift. They're coming off the line at every 60 seconds. So it's pretty fast paced, pretty intense. And there's a level of firefighting we have to do just to survive during the day. But we try to minimize the firefighting and move more toward everyone doing some level of systematic problem solving on the problems that are repeating in their area so that we're eliminating those from coming back. New ones will come up, new problems will be replacing those old problems as we solve them. So to the right, what this says is that over time, our KPIs start to get better. As we do more problem solving, our KPIs are getting better. We're seeing results in the organization that look better. And at the same time, waste will be going down. So automatically waste is coming down. Our KPIs are improving over time. And this becomes the cycle of continuous improvement. Next slide. And one area to focus on in many organizations is the idea of built-in quality. This is, a key foundation for Toyota. If quality leaves the workstation, bad quality leaves the workstation, it's one of the most worst kinds of waste, right? So rework or things leaving out of the process that are not correct is really bad waste. And in order to think about systematic problem solving, we have to first start off with built-in quality at the process. Every process needs to be a stable process. Once we have a stable process, the team members can perform, which is the standardized work. They can perform the process over and over and over again, and they can check their own quality. They execute their standardized work, they can follow and keep up to the job, and they check their own quality before it leaves their workstation. As they check their quality and pass it on to the next workstation becomes the next customer. So we have to have this part of the culture thinking that any work that I do, as I move it on to the next workstation, it needs to be perfect quality leaving my workstation. So this applies not only in manufacturing, this applies in every work that you do in your organization. It applies to all of our support organizations. When we think about the work that they do, as it leaves those workstations in accounting or IT, it needs to have perfect quality as it moves forward to the next internal customer. And is that work checked and confirmed? And is there a standard process that's being followed to confirm the quality and pass it on? So as we move from process 1 to process 2 to process 3, everyone's checking their own work. We're giving quick feedback if you find any abnormalities that Glenn mentioned earlier. Then we have this red diamond here at the end, which is the final inspection point and the end customer. And we need to have good, quick containment of anything that hits to our final customer through that final inspection process. And they are doing their own level of problem solving on any problems that get past their inspection points to the final customer. So the bottom graph here shows that everyone is analyzing their own KPIs. Every workstation, every work team, every work cell is tracking their own KPIs to know how they're performing to their target and goals. They can see their results, and as they're making improvements, they're improving their standardized work. This is how we foster the discipline to follow problem-solving culture in our organization. So next slide. And I'll just come back to this umbrella kind of to emphasize the point that Glenn brought up earlier about this umbrella and, you know, this culture that we want within the organization. And we talk about these standard processes are the arrows coming down. But if you notice, going up the center of the umbrella is the idea that everyone is doing problem solving at their level and on the work that they do. So we have problem solving happening at the operations level. We have problem solving happening in middle management. We have problem solving happening at top management level on the problems that they're facing. And then we have problem solving happening in all of our support groups. So our human resources, our accounting and finance, our IT departments, they all have some level of problems they're dealing with. How do they see those problems? And how are they engaging their staff to work on those problems that are important to the company that will improve the KPIs? So with that, I'm going to turn the PowerPoint presentation over to Pete Gritton, and Pete's going to talk about this one voice.
This slide illustrates the importance that Glenn mentioned earlier about one voice leadership, and the fact that all these behaviors and thinking ways and so forth, methodologies, all have to cascade down through the organization. And that cascade cannot take place unless the leaders at the top, and I'm talking about the top of the organization, the top of the department, the top of the work group, etc., all understand, use common language, common thinking ways that everyone adheres to and follows. Now, it's not a perfect system inside Toyota by any stretch, and it won't be perfect anywhere else. But we like to say that we have most of our people doing most of this stuff most of the time. And that's as good as it gets, right? So it's something that we constantly have to work at and reinforce, is this one voice leadership and this common understanding and common set of behaviors, okay? All right, Sandra, if you could advance. So if we're going to have this lean culture, and Glenn has already mentioned about this foundational element of this, or one of the foundational elements of it, is the person in the process is in the best position to improve the process. And why is that? Because they know the work better than anyone else, right? So if we want to tap into that knowledge, and that's an important thing to do, because that's a win-win for both the company and the employee or the people doing the work, right? For the company, those people, because of their expert knowledge in the process, if we're able to engage them, they will bring about small and sometimes big improvements that will allow their work group, which will build throughout the company and it evolve to the customer, of continuous improvement, a better product at lower cost, better quality, et cetera, right? So it's certainly the win potential there for the company if you have a lean culture. But what a lot of organizations fail to recognize sometimes is the positive or the win for the people doing the work. When people that are doing the work have more control over the work that they're doing, then they will be more engaged. They'll be more willing to implement the tools and follow standardized work and things like that, because they will see the value for them, not just the company. For the true lean culture to thrive, the employees have to feel like their work is better now. The place they come to work is better now because of the continuous improvement or lean culture, right? So we need to get the employees engaged by understanding value for the company, sure, but also important value for the people actually doing the work. Now, for this to happen, leaders have to make 2 or 3 very significant changes in how they approach the work and how they lead or manage their employees, right? So first of all, they have to recognize that problems or uncovering problems is a very much positive attribute that we want throughout the organization. Why is that? Well, we can't fix a problem unless we know about the problem. So we need a culture where leaders are thanking people for elevating problems so they can be addressed. If we find out about a problem 2 weeks from now and we're trying to fix it, we got to go by memory, right? Who was there that day? What were they doing? Was this the day we were doing such and such, and so forth? The best problem solving occurs when problems are identified in real time, because all the facts are right in front of us and we can take the appropriate action. So other things that leaders need to do is they need to understand how important their behavior is and the messaging they're giving to their employees. I'll give you a quick example that happened at Toyota. One day we have morning meetings in all of our plants where announcements are made, carryover items from the previous day are discussed. All department heads come together for 20, 30 minutes out on the manufacturing floor, and this information is shared, right? So one day, our manager of our body weld shop, which is where all the welding of the vehicle parts is done, came to the group and said he wanted to give a big shout out to his team in body weld because they had a 100% run rate to paint, which means that no defects went to the paint shop. And that's almost an impossible task. It's very difficult to achieve on any sort of regular basis. It's not an expectation at Toyota nor anywhere else, really. So when he made the announcement that the team had a 100% run rate, all of us Americans clapped and said, way to go. But our Toyota Japanese executives simply asked the question, what did you do different? And he said, well, I went to every one of my team members one-on-one over both shifts, and I told them to really concentrate on their quality, and we can produce 100% quality to the paint shop. The Japanese responded, so you did nothing. You did nothing in terms of how the work was done. You simply gave a pep talk to the people doing the work. Pep talks are great, they're necessary. I've given many over the years, and I've had many given to me over the years. But what they were looking for is, did something happen to change the standardized work through problem solving and so forth, so that they knew the higher level of performance could be sustained, it could be repeated. Not achieving 100% run rate, but achieving higher level of work, quality work and so forth, because some problem solving had occurred and things had been, new standardized work had been created and therefore could be repeated. The other point that the Japanese executives made to us at that time is, what is the message you're sending to your team members if you are excited and coaching them to have 100% run rate? We want people to surface problems. In our work environment, it's by pulling the cord, the andon cord as we call it. And so Japanese were concerned that unintentionally, the leader was actually giving them the message of, don't pull that cord. So lean and culture is really about developing people. The tools are the easiest piece, right? So all we need to do is continue to improve the skill level of our people in terms of their thinking way and their use of the tools. So we drive that through identifying foundational core competencies or behaviors. We call them competencies at Toyota. But what do we want to communicate to our employees about at every step of the process coming into our organization? These behaviors, or competencies as we call them, are fundamental. They're used for all levels within the organization, whether you're the president or plant manager, or you're part of the custodial service in the shop areas or in the office areas. The idea is, when you recruit me, we talk about these behaviors. We use these behaviors when we orientate new hires and prepare them for going to work in our organization, whether in the office or the floor. It's how we manage their performance. It's what they get measured on, evaluated on, and rewarded on. It loops back into continuous development for our people. Everything we do in terms of training and development for our folks is done on needs-based, that is identified through deviations or inconsistencies in that performance management that comes about. And we realize, okay, we need to strengthen our people's capability in this type of activity or situation, right? And it continues on into succession planning. Who gets promoted here? It's the people who demonstrate the best in terms of thinking and behavior against these core competencies, as we call them at Toyota. So it's a very critical part of the organization. Organizations have to define the right kinds of behaviors and thinking ways, and then eventually build in the infrastructure and the systems to reinforce, measure, evaluate, and reward people based on those behaviors. It's not the first thing organizations need to do because they don't know enough yet to even identify those behaviors. But after they have some practice with moving through the lean into a lean culture, then we have to codify those thinking ways and behaviors by putting them in writing, right? Okay, next slide, Sandra, please. This is another significant concept in a lean world. There has to be a level of mutual trust between the company or management and the employees or team members, as we call them at Toyota. Pardon me. It's a mutual understanding of needs. And the concept is shown in a balance scale because it is a balance. If you look on the left side of the slide, it talks about company expectations, and those are just examples down there: continuous improvement, lower cost, productivity. There's a lot of things you can put on that. On the other side of the scale is the team member expectations, and all of us are team members. Doesn't matter what our level is or position is. We want better pay and benefits. We want a safer work environment. We want stable employment, reduced burden, family balance, so forth and so on, right? And there's plenty of other things we could put on that as well. Well, it's shown in a balance scale because sometimes the company expectations or needs and the team member expectations or needs can appear at least to be in conflict. When it's in balance, then we have a really strong circuitous process where team members are focused on meeting the company's expectations, and management is using profit, and a lot of times it's not a lot of money, it's work environment in addition to money, but it's reinforcing the work area or the work environment in a positive way back to the team members. So for that flow to be maintained, there is a magic bullet to doing that because it's difficult. And that is the big red double A arrow in the middle and the interactive two-way communication. So the concept we're trying to create here is trust. Trust does not always mean happiness. Does not always mean I like you. But what it means is I understand what you're trying to do. I understand why you are trying to do it. I understand the benefit to me as a team member and to me as our company, as a member of our company, how it's beneficial for the company. By the same token, I want you to think about improving my work life and meeting my needs. So we have to have this strong two-way communication process. Most organizations struggle with this. They do a pretty good job of talking about the business environment, the business conditions, but their sensing tools or the second part of the two-way is usually where they struggle. They don't have good sensing or two-way communication processes established in the organization. One last comment on communication, folks. Communication is like safety or quality, anything else. It has to be managed. An organization is not a good, strong communicating organization unless they have infrastructure, tools, processes, audits, so forth and so on. Exact same stuff you would use to manage any part of your operation. You don't just tell your people in your companies, hey, go be safe. You train, you develop, you have processes, you have infrastructure, you have resources, you have all kinds of things to create a safe thinking way and safe behavior. Well, the same type of stuff needs to be in place for communication, for it to be a real asset to the company. Okay, so Sandra, next slide, please. There are 4 essentials in Toyota that we talk about that are necessary to achieve that mutual trust. One is create an environment of trust where I know the company makes decisions about me that impact my life, maybe at work and also at home sometimes. So can I trust them in those decisions? In other words, do those decisions make sense to me? 2, build voluntary continuous improvement. Give me tools and processes to surface my ideas so someone can take action on them. 3rd is people development. Very thorough and committed people development culture. People, even if they're not promoted up through the organization, they feel like they're always being challenged. They always have the opportunity to learn new skills and new thinking ways. And then fourth, we want to promote teamwork. Just a couple of quick examples. Create an environment where team members can work with their trust in the company. Well, there we talk about how organizations have various tools in their toolbox to try to manage the organization in such a way that layoffs are not necessary. Can't be guaranteed there'd be no layoffs, but we want to manage the organization in such a way that layoffs are not necessary. And to do that, the company is going to use, and each company has their own unique set of rules, but the company is going to develop tools and so forth to help the organization achieve that. By the same token, we are going to ask our employees to think a little differently, maybe from compared to what they came from in their organization prior to Toyota. Real quickly, for us, we have one rate of pay for production, one rate of pay for skilled trades. Why? It gives us flexibility to move people around. That creates a lot of job security because we can move people where they're needed and not be locked in because of differences in pay and rules and things like that. Okay. Next slide, Sandra, and I'll turn it back over to Glenn.
Okay, thanks, Pete. And this is kind of a closing slide to say sustainability, because there have been lots of efforts to lean and many of them have failed. They last for a little bit, they fall short, they disappear. We used to do this. So we care that anyone who tries to apply true lean and really strengthen their organization, that it be sustainable. I think all of you want that. And we find there's a lot to sustainability, but kind of a summary form, we see two pillars that are key to sustainability. One is the structure side, which are the principles, standard processes, consistent practices. That's the structure side. And we think of that, there's a Japanese term for that that we'll talk about more about our program, monozukuri. Monozukuri, Japanese word, which really defines the structure, the physical things that we do in a workplace to make good products. The right pillar is people that Pete just talked a lot about. And that's the competencies, which are behaviors, the one voice, and the life cycle elements that Pete just went over, orientation, performance management, development, succession, how to keep the consistency of the people side, because people are the ones who do the work and run the company, whether they're a frontline worker or a president. People are the ones that make up the company. How do you have consistency of people over generations and as people cycle through an organization? And you may have experiences where lean has been tried in the past, and you may say, well, it didn't work, or it fell short, or it disappeared. You probably can point to one or more things on this slide that went away. You didn't respect the structure. You didn't really practice the principles of the standard process. People, this group of people was good, but as we changed over, the next group just didn't get it. So one way or another, these are failure modes of sustainability for true lean. It's a shame to put in effort to strengthen an organization, but see it fall apart and not sustain it. It's frustrating for everybody. So just want to close on the sustainability, monozukuri and hitozukuri. And next slide, Sandra. Now I'd like to move just briefly to an overview of what our True Lean program offers. There's a lot on this slide. I will not cover all the content on this slide. I just want to say that the two pillars on this slide look very much like that sustainability slide I just completed. And then moving up, you'll see 8-step problem solving. That is a key activity and a key practice. So Cheryl introduced 8-step problem solving briefly. We go into more of a training program on what's really in that. How does it really work? What are the real key points? How do you make it effective for yourself? It's such a key part of continuous improvement, the methodology to make the improvement. So 8-step problem solving. And we have worked out an online program availability for 8-step problem solving that we would deliver online. And Carlos will talk about that more also. And then the third highlighted is people side of lean. That is a 2-day activity where Pete and a partner of Pete's would come and actually deliver the real inside meaning of PeopleSide and help you unravel what's your state of PeopleSide, where are your gaps, key cultural piece of the PeopleSide of Lean. So I just wanted to point to those 3 of many services and programs that we offer. And it's always delivered by a group of us with hands-on long experience, having lived it and having done it, not textbooks or not we heard from somebody else and we're smart people that can talk and give you nice PowerPoints. No, we care about practical application, practical transfer of knowledge. That's what we live for. So anyway, with that, if you go to the next slide. And just to mention, we've worked hard with many companies as a program over many years now. So here's some logos of the companies we've worked with really around the world and done our best to help make a difference and have had some really good successes to strengthen organizations. A lot depends on the leadership's commitment, the organization's commitment to listen and work at it. And then all these companies have experienced clear key performance indicator improvements. Results count, but done via putting the system in place, the methodologies in place, the culture in place as the way to deliver those KPI results. Because we know results are important to everybody. All of you listening are likely in positions and roles where you have to get results. There's no way around that. These companies all got results, but they got them in the right way where the system was strengthened and the system is producing the results. The system being a collection of processes, culture, people owning their workplace, all the things we have just talked about. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Carlos next, and we're open for questions and answers. Pete, Cheryl, myself, Sandra, Carlos, open for questions and answers. So hand it to you, Carlos.
Bien, muchas gracias. Thank you, Glenn. It's been a pretty comprehensive introduction of the program. Le daba las gracias a Glenn y al resto del equipo de la Universidad de Kentucky por esta breve introducción que nos han dado a estos conceptos que resumen, si se quiere, un poco un material muy extenso y que el mismo obviamente cubre las bases, como escucharon, no solamente del proceso metódico de mejoramiento continuo, sino también los aspectos de cultura y los aspectos de el rol del liderazgo, que es tal vez lo más importante. Tenemos, recuerden, la sección de Q&A en su pantalla. Hay una que traduciéndola rápidamente dice si pueden comentar sobre el trabajo, sobre el entrenamiento cruzado, los arreglos o los layouts flexibles y qué pasa cuando un trabajador tiene un alto nivel de desempeño en una operación versus estos entrenamientos cruzados con empleados que no tienen necesariamente ese mismo nivel, sino un nivel básico de conocimiento. They just want to know how about cross-training, flexible layouts, employees with greater skills in one operation versus fully cross-trained employees with only the basic knowledge. How do you manage that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So interesting, within Toyota, if we have someone who is a really high performance and has very little waste, very efficient, we want to study to understand what it is that they're doing and how they do it so we can replicate it, right? We want everybody else to be trained to that level. So we go in with the belief that we can teach everybody how to do the best performance if we understand what they're doing to achieve the best performance. And if you watch closely, you have to train your eye to see the waste. And so recently I was working in a food company, and I was watching someone spread the potato salad on the sandwich. and this lady was just spreading it real fast, and she had potato salad all over her. And then another worker came and replaced her. And the next worker was just taking one very smooth motion and using the knife to spread the potato salad and then putting the top on. Very smooth. So you have to kind of train your eye to think about what is the waste. When people are not working so efficiently, usually they're doing many wasteful things. They don't even know they're doing wasteful things. So we have to kind of get people to see hand, eye, and foot motion. And that is the power of standardized work. That's what we're really going to teach. Standardized work is not just this, do this step, do this step, do the next step. In standardized work, we want to tell them, do this step, and here's the key point for how to do it. Here's what you can do to save time, and this is why you do it this way. So when we put all of those elements into our standardized work and train, what we're trying to do is we're trying to train someone brand new off the street to be able to do the job the same way someone who's been doing it for 30 years. We want to capture the skill of that 30-year person who's been doing it, 30-year veteran, and then teach someone new how to be as efficient as possible. As Toyota has continued to develop standardized work and teaching everyone to look at hand and foot and eye motion, it takes a while to teach someone new on the process. So it takes us anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks to teach someone how to keep up on our assembly line. And it sounds like maybe that's reasonable, but if you think about it, it's one job, 60 seconds of work. So you're teaching someone 4 minutes of work. It takes us 4 to 6 weeks to teach someone that 4 minutes of work, because there's just very little waste in their motion and their movement. And I can go back to my training in Japan.
¿Qué pasa cuando el trabajador quiere dar sugerencias, sugiere que las cosas se hagan de una manera, pero recibe esa negativa de parte del supervisor o de la gerencia?
I can start, Cheryl, and then you can correct if you need to. First of all, there needs to be a process established for feedback like that to be taken in earnest and reviewed and discussed. And there needs to be processes built in for that discussion to take place across shifts. For example, if you have more than one shift of your operation, it's all about collaboration. And the core of it is simply good communication. If I'm the boss and Cheryl comes to me and says, Pete, I'd like to do it this way, and I just simply say, well, I'm sorry, Cheryl, that's not standardized work and we're not going to do it that way, then that's not going to drive the right kind of thinking or behavior, right? So what I would need to do is listen carefully to Cheryl and then discuss very carefully with her and evaluate her suggestion. It may be an excellent suggestion or it may be a not so good suggestion, right? But the core of this is to have real effective listening processes in place and your leaders trained to be good, effective listeners and not just dismiss a comment or a suggestion because it's not in agreement with the current way or not in agreement with the way the leader would prefer it be done. So it's having a commitment, if you will, and this is a good example of one of those thinking ways and behaviors on the part of leaders that needs to change. If the leader's been one of these people who makes all the decisions, calls all the shots, and simply gives direction, and now we're asking them to listen to others and evaluate opinion of others, that is a struggle for some leaders to overcome. So they need coaching and development and mentoring to develop that skill because it's critical in a lean culture.
Muchas gracias, Pete, por la respuesta. Yo creo que has dado en el clavo. Es un tema del liderazgo y parte de los programas, y yo voy a poder profundizar un poquito hacia el final, tienen que ver con esto, ¿no? Aquí se trabaja cultura, se trabaja liderazgo y se trabaja el proceso de mejora y los tres van de la mano. No funcionan individualmente, no producen resultados si no están los tres. Esa es la realidad. Dicho esto, me gustaría contestarle a Holly Cerda y a Joe Torres quienes preguntan, por un lado, cuál fue el reto o cuál ha sido el reto más grande que se tuvo para implementar la cultura de True Lean. Y otra, y eso tal vez puedan comentar también ustedes de UK, cómo fue ese proceso en Toyota. Pero ya que hay otra pregunta relacionada que tiene que ver con nuestro país y nuestra cultura y el nivel educativo de las personas que tenemos acá, me voy a tomar la libertad de, antes de que ustedes nos narren un poquito sobre qué pasó en Toyota, voy a narrar brevemente una historia local. Y es que entre el año 2008-2009, junto con un gran grupo de profesionales, pero donde claramente estábamos muy crudos para el reto, nuestra planta de manufactura fue emplazada en una de esas decisiones donde te dicen, o eres más competitivo o vamos a cerrar. Y cuando una corporación norteamericana te pone la pistola en la cabeza y te dice, esto no es personal, esto es negocios, pero si ustedes no son los mejores y no nos dan una razón para no cerrar sus operaciones, lamentablemente ustedes se van. Nosotros en ese momento no conocíamos Lean, no conocíamos estrategia y un montón de cosas que hoy precisamente son parte del quehacer nuestro en GloCal. Quizás producto de aquella experiencia y aquel aprendizaje. Y sí te puedo comentar, Joe y Holly, que el reto más grande de la cultura a nivel nuestro, contrario a lo que tendemos a pensar por el nivel educativo de nuestros trabajadores, pensábamos que iba a ser la gente. Y si bien es cierto que tuvimos que hacer inversión en capacitación, yo creo que los primeros que tuvimos que cambiar la mentalidad fuimos nosotros los líderes, y eso requirió un proceso de alineación que, bueno, a veces no se da tan fácil en las empresas. En nuestro caso fue bastante fácil porque era sí o sí, o nos alineamos y todos hacemos lo que tenemos que hacer, o todos vamos a pagar las consecuencias porque la planta va a ser cerrada. Quizás este sentido de urgencia, quizás este gran porqué detrás nos unió, nos permitió ir en una sola dirección, y esto permitió que implementáramos rápidamente un proceso de reinventarnos todos los procesos dentro de la organización. Y el nivel de participación que yo te puedo decir que tuvieron los operadores nuestros fue increíble. Nosotros llegamos a hacer eventos de capacitación tipo el juego este de Jeopardy, de preguntas y respuestas, y ellos mismos se organizaron en pequeños grupos con uniformes de pequeños equipos, cada uno asumió un color, etcétera. Y todo ese Jeopardy, que no es más que una especie de juego educativo de preguntas y respuestas, lo hicimos alrededor de Lean. Así que hacíamos que la gente estudiara, aparte de las capacitaciones que le dimos, porque había unos concursos detrás. Esto creó un nivel de entusiasmo, un nivel de enganche y de compromiso de la gente sin igual. Yo te puedo decir que era muy inusual ver en una planta de manufactura que las personas tomaran, en vez de la media hora de almuerzo, tomaran 15 minutos y se reunían incluso en los pasillos de la planta, en el piso. Se tiraban al piso y hacían un careo entre ellos mismos, haciéndose preguntas y respuestas. Pero esto no solamente generó ese entusiasmo, esto generó también un nivel de innovación de parte de la gente, que incluso te puedo decir que maravilló a los mismos ingenieros de diseño de la corporación, que los trajimos a ver algunas de estas iniciativas de mejoras no solo de procesos, sino inclusive del diseño de los productos, algo que nunca había pasado. Y hay soluciones que se dieron en ese momento que algunos de ellos, de estos ingenieros de diseño de la corporación, dijeron, jamás hubiéramos pensado que eso que ellos proponen era posible. Y no solamente eso, no habíamos encontrado la manera nunca de hacerlo. Y te estoy mencionando cosas que no eran solo ideas. Ellos traían los prototipos del producto mejorado, hecho con su propio proceso de innovación. Cosas como un curado de una parte, el bonding, el gluing, bajarlo de 8 horas bajarlo a 20 minutos y después decir ellos mismos, pero si cambiamos este material por este otro, miren la muestra aquí, lo bajamos a 20 segundos. Ese fue el tipo de mejoras y eso lo sacaron nuestros operadores de República Dominicana, en los cuales yo creo mucho, pero sí hay que apoyar. Evidentemente esa mentalidad tiene que estar ahí. So Pete, Glenn, or Cheryl, what was the most challenging aspect of implementing True Lean in your Toyota days?
We did not implement True Lean. We had a wave of Japanese from Japan come over and immerse us in it. So we learned, so we started with Greenfield, if you will. So we had a neutral start, all new hires, heavily trained by Japanese in the thinking and the methodology and the Toyota production system. So immersed in it, if you will. We did have to make an adjustment, and Pete may add words and Cheryl on this, to the culture, because in the Japan culture, where people more follow what they're told to do without asking why, they still own their workplace, but they don't ask that silly 3-letter question, why? Why should I? In the Western world, we had to do more appeal and more bridge the why we should do this and give it meaning. Now, we learn the Japanese think that way, but they don't ask it because they learn to respond to what they're told to do as they're growing up. And I'm exaggerating a little bit, of course, but in the Western world, it's very common. Why should I do that? So we had to adjust a little bit of our methodology to manage to appeal to the worker. But we do also understand through the university program, when we go into another company, there is an existing culture already with a history. So that is a harder transition to work through, because changing something from something to something is more difficult than starting in neutral, which we did in Toyota. So the difficulty that we face and the challenge there is the consistency and the commitment, beginning with leadership, not looking for the quick answer. Oh, if I implement this, I'll get a quick result. And we say, no, that's not what it's about. That will not work. Having leadership and management buy-in, and we call it patient persistence to drive change with a longer term view. So not the short term, oh, if I implement problem solving, I'll get some quick results and quick KPI boost. That's it, done. But they don't realize the system and the culture and all that has to happen for this to work for them, sustainability long term. But Pete, Cheryl, you may have added comments, your perspectives on that.
I was going to agree, Glenn. I was going to say, Carlos kind of answered the question about, I think, the biggest challenge that we face making the transition from companies that have an established culture trying to think about lean. It's usually top management. That's usually the biggest challenge, the mindset of top management. So top management thinks they have all the answers, they know everything, and they have to tell them what to do. And it's hard for them to give that up and kind of, let the employees be engaged and how to get their interest in making improvements to their work. And no matter where I've been and what country, and you think about, the culture in each country, basically it goes back to, if you can get people, most people have pride in their work. When you can have them have the pride in their work and the pride in their company, and they want to be a part of a successful team. So when you get them engaged, because they have pride in the work and what they're doing, it's amazing what you can accomplish with that workforce. So you have to set the environment where they feel like their contribution every day is making a difference to the overall success of the company.
And I want to add, before Pete adds his comments, Pete was employee number 8, Ocho, in the United States, in North America. And I think the first 7 were Japanese. Maybe Pete's boss was number 7 and Pete was number 8, American boss. But anyway, Pete has seen from the very origin of Toyota coming to North America, the culture side and the people side and all of the challenges we face. So I just want, Pete won't say that about himself. So I want to say that before he adds his comments from the very beginnings.
Well, thank you, Glenn. I think Glenn and Cheryl nailed it really well. The only thing I would like to add is the biggest challenge to overcome a lot of times is in an existing organization is the feeling, particularly by management and middle management, that this is extra work. And I'm already very busy. How in the heck am I going to do all this extra stuff? And so that's the mindset from the very beginning, because in reality, it is extra work initially, right? I mean, you are doing things that you haven't done in the past, and the payoff does not come immediately. It's a little bit down the road. And so they have the pressure to get all the results they've been getting, but at the same time, adopt these new ways, teach them to their employees, and then follow good PDCA to ensure that they're followed and adhered to, and so forth and so on. So there's this mental block, if you will, or this mental challenge, mental hurdle that has to be overcome. And there's no quick fix to that. There's no, well, just do this. You know, you have to figure out how to manage this quote unquote extra work until you start seeing evidence that it's working and improvements start to come. And one of the ways to do that we utilize, that Glenn and Cheryl pioneered, is the model area concept, where you can start to create this artificial, if you will, to a certain extent, environment that provides the stability and so forth, and some of the support functions, to the point that the lean stuff is not so much extra. And from that, a lot of learning comes, and then it gets shared, and it's easier for follow-up, you know, for the following people, following groups to learn it and master it, and so forth. But that's a pretty significant challenge to overcome, is you're giving me extra work.
Yeah, Pete, that's exactly why it has always worked to do pilots of improvement, because these are easier to manage, but then also it provides the example that yes, it can be done, and all of a sudden you start getting more and more people on that. Sandra, Sandra, if I may ask, because we're on the last 2 or 3 minutes of the presentation, if I can ask you to put the next slide, please, because I've received a couple of questions about how the programs are going to be rolled out. You know, it's been, we have a whole bunch of positive comments on the presentation today, but people want to know what's next, right? If you can please put the next one on. Yeah, next. And I'll switch to Spanish now. Miren, básicamente los programas de la Universidad de Kentucky que están disponibles en línea, se puede accesar y todos van a recibir una copia de esta presentación. Básicamente la oferta de Kentucky no es nueva. Es un programa que viene corriendo, como ya vieron, desde sus orígenes, y que todo esto nace en Toyota. Los hemos seleccionado no solamente por lo que representan, sino por esta acumulación de experiencias personales muy positivas que logramos tener a través de los años, donde nosotros como empresas siempre mandábamos gente a adiestrarse allá. La idea es ir trayendo esos programas localmente. Verán que hay programas que están destinados a trabajar con el liderazgo, o sea, con los líderes, los temas de estrategia. Verán que está todo el tema de personas y cultura. Está también algo en relación a cómo ajustar el modelo de darle seguimiento a las finanzas en un mundo de Lean, se llama Lean Accounting, y está todos estos programas de mejoras de procesos que tienen que ver con diferentes niveles de certificación, y que vamos a traer inicialmente el que consideramos más sólido y que cubre las necesidades más básicas que tenemos, que se llama los 8 pasos de mejoramiento o de resolución de problemas. 8 steps problem solving. Can you put next one, Sandra? So, acá, básicamente, en la presentación que van a recibir, verán cómo hemos distribuido cuáles son estos programas y, digamos, que a qué nivel dentro de la organización les recomendamos ser aplicables. La idea de todo esto es empezar como les dije, con los 8 pasos de resolución de problemas, pero en algún punto, más hacia el futuro, final de año, inicios del año que viene, nuestro interés e intención es inclusive traer a los instructores de Kentucky a hacer por lo menos una semana, 2 veces al año, donde se puedan ver estos programas también en vivo para la audiencia de República Dominicana, lo cual obviamente la idea es hacerlo mucho menos costosos, más asequibles para nuestra población, porque no solamente serían a muchos mejores precios cuando se arma todo el paquete, sino que también se evitan el costo del viaje, el ticket aéreo, hotel y todo lo que conlleva eso. De manera que muchos van a recibir más información por correo. Nos resta solamente agradecerles por el tiempo que nos han dedicado el día de hoy. Esperemos que esta iniciativa, apoyada por todas estas instituciones y en particular por el Ministerio de Industria y Comercio, se convierta en un programa que apoye esto que ahora tratamos de hacer, que es el desarrollo de la República Dominicana, el desarrollo del sector industrial, y recordar que esto no es solo industria, que si bien nació en industria, hay muchísimas empresas del área de servicio que están en estos procesos de mejoramiento. De manera que hay todo este movimiento, y dada que existe esta necesidad, estamos tratando de traer la solución de la mejor manera y de la manera más costo efectiva posible. Así que les agradecemos a todos su participación. Voy a decir en inglés, Pete, Glenn, Sandra, Cheryl, thank you so much for having been able to be with us today. It's been an awesome experience, and I hope it's the start of something that will greatly benefit our little but with a big heart country, the Dominican Republic.
Thank you, Carlos.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for your time. Thanks, Carlos.
Thanks very much.
You all. Bye-bye.
Muchas gracias a todos. Despedimos el evento en este momento.
GloCal Group Consulting trabaja con las organizaciones que buscan alcanzar resultados extraordinarios, convirtiendo la visión estratégica de los líderes en compromiso y ejecución acelerada a través de una cultura de pertenencia y mejoramiento continuo. Estrategia, liderazgo, cultura organizacional, ejecución y mejora en una misma empresa a tu servicio. Somos expertos globales en soluciones locales. GloCal, pasión por mejorar.